Hey everybody, welcome to Tone Talk with Mark Uzansky and Dave Friedman. How are you? It is Monday evening. I was about to say Friday evening, but it's Monday evening. And we have got an awesome guest, an amazing composer, musician, guitar player, an icon, someone I've been a huge fan of for a long time, Steve Vai. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Mark?
I'm good.
And Dave. Right on.
And
Thank you
Dave,
for inviting me on the show.
oh, thanks for coming. It's my God, a huge pleasure to have you. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Yeah, just getting ready to go to Europe.
Yeah, when do you leave?
The 5th.
Where you going?
I have some clinic tour obligations that I have to do, and this YouTube event that a YouTube guy, Henning Pauly, is putting on with a bunch of different channels and stuff. Should be really interesting.
Where in Europe are you going?
So, Germany, Netherlands, Barcelona, Paris, Lyon, France also. Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds like I'm reading my itinerary for a Europe tour.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've never been to Barcelona, so I'm very curious about that. So,
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
that's what I hear.
It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
Probably one of the more packed cities in Spain. It's very cultural though, and they're just real music lovers there too. Spain in general,
Mhm.
it's a market if you're a touring musician.
Yeah, that's great. Great. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't wait.
yeah. I went to Madrid, but I've never been to Barcelona. But I heard everybody kept saying, "Oh, we need to go to Barcelona while we're here," but it just didn't make it. So,
A couple of locations. I like Pamplona.
mm,
It's a cute little city, and San Sebastian. It's more like a beachfront city.
Uh,
There's a couple that are buried that are really nice.
Excellent.
how often you make it over there?
Well, whenever I'm touring, usually if I'm doing any kind of a comprehensive European tour,
Mhm.
the last tour, the Passion and Warfare tour, we booked a bunch of shows. We booked like 5 or 6 shows in Spain, and they sold so well we added like another 6 shows in different parts of Spain. So I think I ended up doing like 11 or 12 shows in Spain.
Wow.
It was
So
fun.
you were there for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
We
cool.
you dip in and maybe some other things and come back. But I've been really, when I tour, I've really have been focused on trying to go to as many different territories in a particular country.
Mhm.
That's something that's always on my wish list. Whenever I would put a tour together, I would talk to my agent and say, "Oh, I want to go here, and I want to go there, and I want to go there." And I started asking him to book me in like Eastern Europe in the early '90s, and he was just, "You can't go there yet. You just can't get there."
Mhm.
As soon as it opened up, I started going. But same thing with Russia and China. Been to some great places through Russia. I did a 5.5 week tour of Russia.
Wow.
Fun.
Yeah, it was fantastic. We started in Vladivostok, where on a clear day you can see Japan. They tell me, and we just made our way all the way across the country. We went through Siberia, and it's interesting because I was told I performed in some places in Siberia that they've never had an American rock artist, like in Omsk and Tomsk and places like that. But it was just such an interesting cultural diversity to tour through Russia.
Mm.
Any means necessary. We were on trains, planes, buses,
I was going to ask, how'd you get around? Was it like a tour bus, or so you took it all?
tour buses that I know of where we went. And it's just kind of public transportation, which is rustic.
I've been to Moscow once, and this was quite a few years ago now, and maybe at least 10 or 15 years ago now, and yeah, I understand rustic.
Yeah. First time I went to Russia, I played this White Nights festival, because it was at a time when the sun didn't go down. You know, it was the summer, and it was in the mid '90s, and back then Russia was completely different. Moscow,
Yeah.
very, very, and St. Pete was very different than it is now, and yeah, it was. I mean, they were just coming out of the whole communist thing. You know, it was relatively that kind of freedom was relatively new, but it still had all the sort of communistic remnants and culture. You know, the architecture and just the way that they were set up over there was a real surprise, because I think we kind of take for granted how free we are here as far as, and I'm talking about back then. You go to a store and you want to buy something, there it is. You got tons and tons of things you can purchase, and you go into a supermarket and it's gigantic. And back then, they didn't have things like that. But then as the years went by and everything started to get imported, now it's like, you know, Moscow it's like a cultural mecca. You know, they got all the fine fashions and gear, you know, all the music gear you can get there now.
Oh, really?
Beautiful stores, yeah. It's just amazing.
Interesting. That's cool. Now, you just got back, right, from doing your VAI Academy?
Mm-hmm.
How'd that go?
Oh my goodness, it was just so fantastic. You know, we started doing it about 6 years ago, and 7 years ago, and this is we just did the 5th one, I believe. I don't remember these things.
I think it was the 5th one. Yeah.
Yeah, 5th, yeah. And it was just great. You know, conventionally we invite some higher profile friends to come and, you know, teach and give seminars. And this year we had Pliny and Devin Townsend and Andy Timmons and Joe Satriani came, and Larry Mitchell. And it was just great. You know, it was just such a great atmosphere. And the people there, it was sold out. We had about 200 the capacity was like 200, but I think we had like 203. And they're always at these fantastic locations where it's just so comfortable and sort of resort living. And there's all sorts of functions going on in all the rooms, and we've got really great clinicians. Like, you know, you guys know Dave Wiener. He's there playing and teaching, and Stig Matson, you know, he's fantastic clinician. And you can just go to all these rooms, and there's always something going on. And then each of the guests would give a class, and I would give classes, and we were actually focusing the camp on, because I like to kind of keep some kind of a theme, and it was sound sculpting. So we talked about signal path and certain gear parameters and various pieces of gear, and how they how they work, what they do, various orders of gear and effects pedals, and you never get to do everything you want. I mean, you know, of course I made lists and lists of things I wanted to talk about, and then the next thing you know, 2 hours have passed and I've been gabbing. But the thing I like about my camp is I jam with all the players. It's really fantastic, because we have my band, and this takes like 4 or 5 hours a night for like 4 nights, and everybody, they come one at a time, and it doesn't matter at all what frequency level, you know,
right?
Wherever you're at, as far as your technique is just fine, because we make music, and then I ask them, okay, start anything, you know. And it's so great because they start playing and you're forced to listen and to communicate. And, you know, I don't sit there and blaze over everything. I actually try to connect with the player.
Right, and see what they're doing. Yeah.
And it's really, really great. It's funny, even after 4 days of 5 hours a night of it, I was missing it the next day.
That's cool.
My fingers weren't.
So it's
right.
So it was over like 4 or 5 days?
Yeah. 4 days usually.
Yeah, I saw a video you guys just posted of it was a kid that came up on stage with you and played.
We had little girls even, and, you know, even elderly people sometimes. Not old, but, you know, 60s, 70s.
Nice.
Fantastic. And we do it about, I think at first we tried like once a year, but it felt a little much. So we kind of space it out. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it'll be like 18 months or so. But we want to try to get to some different areas too, like maybe Europe. It's just, the logistics are a little more difficult. But yeah, it's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Cool.
So is that your studio? Is that a home studio or?
Studio. I think many people have seen it already. I'll turn the light on, take you around a little bit. Right? In the background, I'm all tied up with my computer, but you can see the console.
Yep.
And then I
That's
sit
nice.
there and work all day. It's kind of like there's my little lounge. I got a little meditation lounge.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's
Yeah, that's
really-
cool.
I didn't want it to look like a studio. It looks more like a, I don't know, gentleman's library or something.
Right.
Yeah, the wood it gives you the and a little bit of the books. Yeah, it helps. That's cool.
And you got the other room filled with guitars everywhere.
Yeah. That's the guitar room.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always got to be a guitar room.
I can. You know what? Let me. I can unplug all this. You're not going to go away. I'm just going to lose my drives. Whoops. Hang on one second.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Here we get the tour. Awesome.
I'm going to get the four. I like colored lights.
Yes.
Those lights over there I got in Istanbul.
Aha.
It's got a little restroom. And then this is the playing room.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Few guitars.
And, I would have to send somebody to go get it. But this is one of my favorite parts. Check this out. This is something I always wanted. Oh, baby.
Oh, yes. All the pedals.
All the pedals. This is like my coloring.
Nice.
That's like the things that excite me. I don't even own a car. Well, I do, but it's not really. I've had it since 1986, but I don't drive. But things like that, I do drive, but I rarely. I don't need to. My favorite car is Uber. But that little pedal chest was something I always wanted to have.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Uber. That's great. Especially in LA, right?
Oh, right. Absolutely.
So what's the car you have?
If I was ever rich and famous, what would I want? Well, besides my own orchestra, which I'm working on, I thought I'd love to have a driver who can, drive me around wherever I need to go. But that's always kind of, that comes with complications. With Uber, I just hit that Uber button and I walk right outside and they're there.
It's amazing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I always wanted a Tesla, I thought, okay, now I'm going to get a Tesla. And I'm like, why? It's just going to sit in the garage. Nobody's going to drive it.
But they're cool, right? But they're cool.
Yeah, they're cool.
You probably spend less in Uber fees than the cost of the Tesla, or even the lease or whatever you would have.
You do. It's funny. So I want to mention to folks who are watching, I know that we've got a lot of folks who are going to have a lot of questions. We will get to your questions, I promise. And I wanted to mention as well that if you guys want to check out any Steve Vai gear, Ibanez guitars, check out Sweetwater. Go to Sweetwater. Go to sweetwater.com because beginning this Friday, August 30th, they're rolling out a really great exclusive for a Fender Custom Shop GT11 Strat and Tellys and Walrus Deep 6 Voyager combo pedal and a whole bunch of other stuff. And then also 48-month interest and financing on a lot of brands. So check that out, all right? So moving on to other things.
You can buy a gem.
You can buy a gem, exactly.
And a bad horse you walk.
All that Vai gear.
And straps.
So how did the VAI Academy come into development?
Danny Heaps, he was a manager, and he still manages, but he had this idea, and he approached us, and I've been approached with things like that before, but I just never had the stomach to kind of pull it all together. And he said, "Nope, you don't have to do anything. I will do it all," And so, well, it's something I always wanted to do, because he started a company. And he started doing these camps, and he does a lot of them. He does Joe's camps, he does Tommy Emmanuel's, and he does different kinds of camps. I think he's starting to merge into other things besides guitar. But yeah, he laid it out, and we talked about it, and I thought, he's got this completely covered. I don't have to worry about finding the venue, worry the expenses of things, balancing all that, and he just presented it to me, and I thought, okay, this is good, let's go. And it just turned out much better than I could have expected. And every year it just gets more and more engaging and fun. And I see a lot of people coming back, the repeat campers, so to speak. And so it's a nice place to go and meet new old friends.
Yeah, it's great. We actually have someone in the super chat, Jasco Plumbing Supply wrote, "Hey guys, I was a camper at 5.0. Please let Mr. Vi know how grateful myself and all the campers are. It was a life-changing experience, and jamming with him is something I will never forget."
Thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks.
I was talking to somebody, and I was thinking, we were mentioning how cool would it have been when in the 70s, when I was a young guitar player, if they had like this, but they didn't have anything like this that I knew of.
No, or even like the rock and roll fantasy camp, stuff like that. There was nothing like that, I guarantee it. We also wanted to mention Robert Bogdan. Thanks for the contribution. You didn't have a question though, so that seems cool. Now, how did you get involved with the Generation X?
That's it was sort of another one of those fantasy ideas. See, I love composing, and I love arranging, and I love Brian May.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was such a master at his unique craft of building these beautiful guitar orchestras that resonate in ways that I've just, you never hear. I've tried many times to try to get that orchestra guitar sound that he kind of has. There's just no way. It's just unique to him. But the idea of having a bunch of guitar players on the stage, aggressive rock guitar players with, the rock tone, so to speak, playing these intricate melodies and harmonies, that I had never seen. And in my mind's eye, I was picturing how it would look. And I thought, I have to do this. This is just fantastic, So the idea, so I put it on the back burner for years with many other kind of ideas. And I just, for the right moment, for the universe to say, okay, it's time. And that time came when I received a call from Miles Copeland, who's a manager, pretty heavyweight manager, very creative guy. And he invited me on a guitar tour of sorts. And, I've done many of them, many kinds of guitar tours. And some of them, like G3, are just fantastic. That was always a treasured experience. But I kind of, and I did the Experience Hendrix tour. I like that. But I said to him, well, I'll tell you what, I have an idea. And I explained it's one backing band with all these different players coming on and off the stage to combine performing in different ways, in different songs. And so I wrote this list of various genres like metal, rock, blues, fusion, acoustic, etc. And I wrote all my favorite guitar players in each column. And because I thought that this concept could be sort of moved to different genres. as opposed to just being one genre.
Mm-hmm.
And I started with the one that I would probably be most comfortable in, which was the metal, because I was just hearing that, hearing these screaming, beautiful, flowing electric guitars in harmony. And, a lot of, if I was to do that with a jazz combo or something like that, it would be different, and I probably wouldn't fit in. But the metal one, the rock one, I knew I'd fit in. So the top of my list, I had, the guys that decided to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had Zach, Yngwie, Nuno, and Tosin. And I just thought I've known them professionally through the years, but they each have such a unique voice on the instrument. They've made great contributions, and they have a uniqueness. You see, with the Generation X, I really needed to get guys that were very comfortable in their skin, that were confident in what they do, and have some cachet, obviously, but also, I guess, first and foremost, they needed to have a good sense of humor, And I had to feel like it was going to work with the personalities. And you put on paper Zach Wilde, Yngwie Malmsteen, Nuno Bettencourt, Steve, and people were telling me I'm out of my mind. You're never going to get those guys to get along and get on a bus and, work together. But boy, oh boy, everybody was like, how are you going to do this? How are you going to get these guys to live together and work together? And I just felt that the concept, if they get the concept is bigger than any of the individual parts, you know?
Plus, everybody's matured a lot over the years.
Completely settled. They've been through it. They've been through the ego trips and all that stuff.
Right.
And there's respect, And there was, and it's a cake tour, because you go up there. I mean, the idea visually was to start the show with all 5 players coming out and playing a song that was everybody kind of knew, but doing it differently. And in the first tour, we started out with foreplay. And I heard that. I was in I was in my shower, and the radio was on. This is years ago, and I heard that song, and I said, "That's the show opener," because it's got that melody, da 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 da. And when you hear that with all the harmonies and all the guitars, it's just fantastic. But originally, one of the songs that came into my mind that really got me excited was Bohemian Rhapsody. But that's a beast, man. To try to get that performed on 5 guitars, and in the first tour, we just didn't have the time in rehearsal to do it. So the show was really nice because it started out with all of us coming out and did a few songs, and then Nuno joined him for a song, and then Nuno did his set, and Zach joined him. And then, we kind of did that, and there was a part where Yngwie and I played together. We do Black Star, and it's just great. And then the four people are out there, and we did Frankenstein, which was really nice to, get all those horn lines. It's a really cool kind of a song with all those melodic harmonies. Have them shifting back and forth between the guitar players. It was great. And I heard that in my head, and I thought if everybody, can kind of like play the part in those sections, it's just going to be great. And it just turned out so great. Everybody got the picture. They saw the big picture. And then we did Highway Star. And I wanted to create like an ensemble piece and feature one of the guys in each of them to have a little more of a presence. And like, you can see Frankenstein, Tosin has a little more of a presence, and Highway Star was Yngwie's track, and Bohemian Rhapsody was Nuno, because he plays the main melody. So it was working out really well. And I think that the tour itself, something interesting happened. Sure, at first there was, we had to get through feeling everything out and feeling everybody out and recognizing the spaces, so to speak. But there was a camaraderie that evolved that was even a surprise to me. We all just really came together and enjoyed it, because these guys, they've been touring it's in decades, and you've done it all, and this was an opportunity where you're not You don't have to even do a whole show. You know, you're just doing a couple of songs and then the ensemble pieces, and then you've got. You don't have to do the business because it's all handled. It's not your band, you know. It's so there's the relief of that kind of stress. It felt more like a vacation, you know what I mean? Like the kind of thing you worked your whole life for. And it was just such a nice tour, the first one we did, that we decided to do another one. We went to Asia, and that was fantastic. That's where I recorded everything, and that's where I took everything to make the record. And then we did another North American tour last year, and changed the setup, and that's where we worked on Bohemian Rhapsody. And I got to tell you, performing that song was a real lesson in discipline, because I got every one of Freddie's vocals and dished it out for 5 guitars. And when you're playing something like that and you've got 5 people with guitars, hot electric guitars, you know, in order for it to speak together, you have to connect with each person. You have to be like your radar has to be completely tuned in to what the other guy is doing. You got to kind of almost like have a ESP experience, you know, because you got to be so connected. And we focused on things that were so subtle but important, like no vibrato, you know. And if you're used to playing and with vibrato, I mean, you got guys like Zach, who's got one of the widest, craziest vibratos in the world, or Yngwie, and you say no vibrato. This note has to just sing just like that, and let's use this pickup and turn the volume down to here, and the note has to, you know, the way we were starting notes and ending notes, they have to start and end exactly together. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're Freddie Mercury and you're in the studio overdubbing your vocals, and you're as brilliant as him, it comes natural.
It's got a blend.
You can stack vocals, but when you stack things, but when you've got 5 individuals, you have to almost breathe together. That they would all watch me, and I would just kind of very subtly move, and that would be the cues for the beginning. And it was just it sounded so great.
I heard the recordings. It did sound great.
Yeah, it's not on the last record. No, it doesn't sound great online when you go and you watch these little YouTube. I've got it.
Yeah.
You know, all the and everything. But yeah, it just turned out so well. Unfortunately, it's not on this last record we released because that was culled from the Asia tour. But we have it on the shelf, and pretty soon I'll be breaking it out and tweaking it for months and months and months.
That's cool. You'll belabor over it.
For you.
That's awesome. How did you and Dave get to meet?
Dave Wiener? Or
No, Friedman.
Dave Friedman. Well, I had known Dave from when his amp, came out. I mean, the guitar players hold a special reverence for these brilliant amp designers. Because for someone like me, that's like so out of my ballpark. When I was designing the Legacy with Carvin, I figured I better know something about how, I mean, of course I know the basics, but when it comes to electronics, I'm as dumb as a stump, man. I just don't retain it. It's completely uninteresting to me. And I started reading these books, and I'm like, nope, I'm not going there.
Doesn't interest you.
Yeah. So people who have a natural, organic kind of understanding and inclination for electronics, it's kind of like when if you always wanted to compose music, and you're talking to a composer who understands all the little black dots, you're just fascinated, Mm-hmm. So I'm always fascinated. And when Dave started to hit the scene, I was always interested in hearing, custom amps that were so precision built by guys that make it their passion, because that's the only way it ever really works well, and that's the only way they ever survive. They got to have not only the academic understanding of the infrastructure of the electronics of an amplifier, but they got to hear a tone in their head that they're chasing and know how to get it. See, I wouldn't, if I had to build an amp and I had to do that, I don't even know the vocabulary, you know what I mean? So I had been with Carvin, so I was pretty satisfied, I wasn't really listening to many different amps. But Dave Weiner, the guitar player in my band, got the Friedman amp, and I started listening to it, and his tone always sounded great. And sometimes I'd be like, why does his tone sound so good? What is I'd go over and plug in, I'd fool around with the amp, and it's a cool amp.
Which amp was it? Just curious.
The BE100.
Sorry?
BE100 amp, yeah, that we have, the BE100. It's a little older one at this point.
Yeah, but that was...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the name was always kind of met with reverence in my mind, and I had gotten some of the amps, and I started playing with them, and I think because I was in the deal with Carvin, I wasn't ready to kind of switch, and the legacy is just such a... I mean, we did work hard on it to get it to work for my ear and for what I was searching for. So once I kind of took that path, I just stayed on it until that amp sounded like what I wanted. And once I got it, and that was what I used. But I have a plethora of amplifiers in the studio, as you can see. I mean, I've probably got one of everything or most of it. And I pull that amp out occasionally on some of the tracks and use it because it does fit a certain frequency range that sits well in the track.
Well, that's cool.
So I've known Dave, but I never really got to meet him until relatively recently.
Actually, I did a rack system for you a million years ago.
Oh, really? Tell me about it.
You were using a Bogner head.
Oh my God!
EHT power amp and an Egnator head.
Egnator, yeah.
Yeah, the Egnator in the center, and then
That's right.
Was it the power amp left and right kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that was a Fire Garden tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A small rack, like 12 space or something.
First Bogner's made, I believe.
Yeah, I used it for a lot of years.
Yeah, I still got it. It's in the rack.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a very kind of open, compressed, friendly bottom end. Low notes kind of soak up the room. But then I was kind of here, I wanted more definition.
Yeah.
Start to move around with some different amps.
It was a long time ago. It was I remember being at your studio, Light Without Heat.
You were at the mothership up in
mothership, yep.
Yeah. Was I using the Bradshaw switching system at the time?
Yeah, I had changed the switching system, but you're still using the Bradshaw floorboard, yeah.
Was that before you were making amplifiers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was sort of a little bit in partners with Bruce Egnator back in the early '90s, and I think that's where the head came about. Yeah.
I like that Egnator head too.
All sorts of tones over the years.
Yeah, you got to switch it up though,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's what we all do, right?
Yeah.
You got to. So speaking of that, go ahead.
Recent. When I discovered the Synergy system, that kind of stopped me dead in my tracks. That was an eye opener, a game changer. Really, for me, it was a total game changer, and it's almost like a well kept secret. And I don't know if it's just me, or or people don't get what it is, because this system has so much functionality. I'll tell you about it. So, basically when you're a guitar player, you get an amplifier. And if you're feeling randy, you go out and you get a couple of amplifiers and you get a switching system, and then you're dragging all these things around and on tour and getting the right balance in the PA of all the different microphones on each of the amps and everything. It's impractical. And I think I've toured with 2 amplifiers at the most. and it was just logistically difficult and tone wise inconsistent. So I just abandoned the idea, and I went back to just using one amp, trying to get as many sounds out of 2 channels as I can get. But then I think, I don't know, maybe you know, Dave, when Randall, was it, started making these modular preamps?
Well, it originally started with, well, yes, Randall did make some, but originally started, Bruce himself was making them in a high-end version of it. Then it was licensed to Randall, and then they made them for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually that ended.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually Avi owns the rights to Egnator, so he made the Synergy system.
Well,
it's a brief explanation.
Well, that's more than I probably knew.
Yeah.
Sure glad he did, because the functionality of it, just like, it's a game changer. So what it is basically is you've got these, you know, for those that maybe don't understand, and you're listening to somebody with relatively limited knowledge of amplifiers, but an amplifier is basically a guitar amplifier. When you see the heads, they're basically 2 different sections to that amplifier. One is the preamp section, and the other is the power amp section. The preamp section is the area of the amp that has where the sound, most of the sound comes from. Mm-hmm. The distortion, the kinds of the quality of the gain, the flavor of the EQ comes from, and this is like the secret piece of gear that each amp company works on very diligently to try to craft for their sound, because after the sound leaves the preamp section, it just goes to an amplifier. And of course, amplifiers can color the sound, but would you agree with me, Dave, when I say not like a preamp?
Yeah, I mean, in more modern amplifiers, most of the sound is coming from the preamp section in the amplifier.
Yeah.
Most all of it, actually.
But last time I said that in the press, I got people telling me, and I know it's wrong, but you know.
I mean, more vintage style amps, you know, where you have to crank the amp up to get the distortion out of it. You're getting more of the sound from the saturating power section of the amp.
Right.
But in most modern stuff with higher gain sort of capability, it's pretty much all in the preamp. I mean, you're not even, in these days, you're not even running the power amp that loud to really do anything.
Exactly. These days, I don't. I mean, I don't play loud really well.
Hey, I heard your stage.
Yeah.
A little bit. You were playing pretty good volume.
Oh, when I'm on stage, I'm pretty loud. But I can turn it down in back of me, and I've got my wedges in front of me.
Yeah.
But the great thing about the Synergy is, so the preamp section is really where the color and the tone and, you know, the majority of the sound comes from. So all of these wonderful boutique amp builders, like yourself and Egnator and Wagner and so many of these. There you go.
Yeah, here's a Morgan.
AC.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's the AC, kind of AC30, the AC30 one. Yep. So what Avi did was he went and he actually licensed the technology, the schematics for many of these companies, these boutique companies that make these fabulous amplifiers. He licensed the schematics for the preamp section, where all the sound is. Now, this is not modeling. You know, this modeling is something completely different than what we're talking about.
Yeah, this is tubes.
Yeah, this is real tubes. The preamp sections actually have tubes in them, and they're modular. You just saw one of the modules, and this was like an epiphany for me, because now I've got my system. I should have taken. Maybe I want to go back in the studio.
Sure.
See my Synergy system.
Let's see it. You have your module there, your green one?
Got my module. See if you can.
Oh. Is he still there?
We'll see.
Steve?
Well, guys, we might have lost him.
We may have a technical difficulty. Let's see what happens. Uh-oh. I wonder what happened.
And that's it for the show. Sorry.
We'll get Steve back. He'll come back.
Well, basically what he was going to show you is he has a rack that has I think just two Syn 2s, which hold 2 modules each. And he has 2 of them, so he has 4 modules. He might have 3 of them, I forgot. And so essentially with the 4 modules, he can switch between, various amplifier sounds and kinds, and between his amplifier and all. And yeah, you get...
we lost him.
Get it good. Can't see that. Oh, can see it, sort of.
Can you see it?
He is a green module.
That's the green module. Let me get Steve back on. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Take 1 second. While we're waiting.
Rick, hi, Rick.
Whoops, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. We lost you.
Okay, so I'll continue. So this, can you see it okay? Is it working?
Yeah, we see it.
I know I got more lights in here, but...
So 3 Syn 2s, I briefly explained.
Syn 2s. I have 6 amplifiers, and each one has 2 channels. And they go through my fractal up here, and any kind of other gear. I've got racks and racks of stuff, and all sorts of different amps. That DV Mark's a nice one. This Victory's a fantastic amp.
Yeah, those are
They're
great
all
amps.
so different in color. I'm trying to get those guys to make modules for, allow Avi to make modules, because I'd love to have those in my rig. But, so then there's the floor. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like this is the different channels. And I have the Legacy. It actually has a loop in it, so you can put any amp of your choice in. And this is a new switching system I'm fooling around with. And so I've just got all of these tones instantly changing. So imagine coming from 2 channels to 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice.
It's amazing. It really is, and they all have their own individual sounds.
Completely different sound, and then they all flow through the same effects, and then they flow into a power amp, and then so we've got just a stereo setup with all of these different amps. It's really nice.
Are you using the fractal for just basically effects?
Yeah.
So that's running through the loop, I imagine.
Yeah, that's running through the loop. It's the most transparent digital piece of gear that I've ever tried. It's very powerful. It's like a space station,
Yeah.
I mean, you can get lost in the abyss in that thing. And if you really want to get forensic with it, you can build all sorts of sounds that it's infinite, perhaps. And it's easy now. Every time they come out with a new one, it's easier and easier to use. The interface is much easier, so you can use modeling with it. I don't really do the modeling. The problem with me in modeling is there's two things. One is there's latency. Granted, the fractal has got the least latency. It's less than a millisecond, which is pretty respectable. You should check that statistic, though. I'm not exactly sure. That's what I was told. And the modeling amps always have, they're good for certain things. There's a body to them that's missing somehow. They always sound a little, and sometimes they sound great, but then you get them with a band and you've got bass sucking up frequencies and the cymbals and all this, and the sound doesn't cut. And cutting doesn't necessarily mean it's got to be louder and brighter. You know, this needs to be an integrity in the tone, in the roundness of the tone, that's going to be able to compete with all these bombarding frequencies on a stage and cut. And I just haven't found a digital amp that does that yet. And even
doesn't quite sit right.
It doesn't
mix. Yeah.
Even bands that I know of and friends of mine in bands that people know that use the modeling and they go directly into the console, basically, you get a clean, great sound, so to speak. But still, it's a little too evolved for my ear, meaning sound is evolving, and the way that we're playing music and the way that we're building gear, it's sort of like, you know, you go from tapes to digital, and there's just kind of a difference, but you can't go back. You know what I mean? It's hard to go back to buying CDs. Well, CDs are digital too, but you know, well, a lot of people are going back to vinyl.
Yeah.
But a lot of musicians are maybe using the modeling stuff, and then you start getting used to the way it sounds, and it sounds like a contemporary sound. I just don't want to evolve that way.
Hey, you're a purist.
Analog amp.
Yeah, and they sound great.
Yeah.
We're sitting there, you know, in 30 years with my Synergy system. No, I'm not changing.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I'm psyched about when it comes out. I gather it'll be a while. Do you guys have a release date on when that's coming out?
What's that?
Your module.
Oh, you know what? I guess the announcement was today.
Oh, yeah?
I have well, it's only because I'm announcing it now. I probably shouldn't have, but, you know, I don't care about that stuff. Yes, I made a module. We worked really hard on it, and Dave could probably tell you about it because he worked hard on it. He gave it the final tweaks. And I'm not sure when it's actually going to be released, but I got mine.
They're working on getting it into production. I know that much. So when it actually hits the streets is a good question. I don't have that answer.
Yeah. We got to get Avi on the phone.
I don't think it's going to be crazy long time or anything. I think it's going to be relatively soon. Or
yeah. Well, we just pretty much honed in on it. So
yeah.
Awesome.
So.
Yeah. Sorry if I let the cat out of the bag there. I saw it at Sweetwater Gear Fest and everything. I thought we were cool to mention it. So.
Yeah. Who cares? No, it's fine. I mean, the way that even things are presented to the public these days is different than it used to be. You know, in the past, you had to be very secretive.
Yeah.
I think there's some of that, but I don't know. I'm over all that. You know.
I think we talked about it at Gear Fest too. So I think the cat was out of the bag a few months ago.
Yeah. So there you have it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I wanted to mention. We have a tie with you with one of our first guests on our show. Actually, our first guest on our show was Grover Jackson. And so we talked about... Oh, sure.
Hello? Okay. Sorry. Yes,
Nope,
Grover
nope.
Jackson.
Yeah, so Grover was on the show, and we talked about your green Meanie guitar. He told us the story about the guitar. So you love that guitar, right? I mean, you used that for a long time.
Well, that was my first. That was my first favorite guitar. When I was growing up, I really liked Les Pauls. I didn't own a Les Paul. I had a fake Les Paul. It's called a Univox. Yeah. My first guitar was a Tesco Del Rey, you know, with the three. And then I was a big Led Zeppelin fan, and I had to have a Les Paul. But I didn't like the way they sat, you know. the shape of the body, and they didn't have a whammy bar. And I remember when I first discovered what a whammy bar was, it was like, okay, there's my arm. I just knew the potential of it, and I said, any guitar I have has to have a whammy bar, you know. And so I struggled with the fake Les Paul for a while, and then my mom got me a Strat, 1976, or it's a 77. And I was 16, and that was like the holy grail. But I didn't like the way it sounded, because Strats, new Strats and all, you know, they were kind of thin. They didn't represent rock and roll to me for some reason. I mean, I didn't know how to appreciate the tone of a Strat back then, you know. I just wanted big. I was trying to find big. But I used this guitar, and that was the main guitar. I mean, I probably put more notes on that guitar than any others. And I used it all through my teenage years, and then at Berkeley, and then when I joined Frank, that was my main guitar. But then when I joined Alcatraz, that Strat was just, that particular Strat was not going to cut it. And I really wanted a guitar that had that big sound with not single coil, but double coil pickups, but had a whammy. And Grover was doing it. You know, Grover was making guitars. He was making guitars. The first was the Charvel, and Edward was, from what I know, and you know, this is just from my recollection of things. He was the first one to have like what we call now a super Strat, where it's a Strat shaped body with the humbucker. And I thought that, okay, there you have it, you know. So, but I wanted more pickups, and there was other things I wanted to do that you know, were different. So the guys in Alcatraz knew Grover. Grover was a friend of Jimmy Waldo's. And Jimmy knew I needed a guitar, so I went down there, and Grover was great. You know, he was very supportive, and he loaned me. I needed this guitar because when I joined Alcatraz, I got the call, and I actually auditioned, and I had one full day to learn the entire set, and then a gig.
Wow.
Yeah, because Yngwie was in the band, and he had just left, and they still had 3 gigs left on the tour, and I was the crazy one who thought, yeah, why not? This is an experience. I don't play anything like him, and everybody's going to be expecting him, but hey, heck. We went down to Grover, and he gave me that guitar. He loaned it to me, but he never got it back.
Yeah, that's his story as well.
Yeah. That guitar wasn't originally green.
Right, no, it wasn't green. I'm telling that story because that's the story I hear he tells, so I believe it. Because I can't remember any of that stuff from back then. Once I got that guitar, it didn't matter if I had to pay for it or whatever. I wanted that guitar. It was just fantastic. It was a Sunburst Charvel that had a whammy bar and a humbucker. And I took that, my tech at the time, Elwood, Patrick Francis, real interested in guitars and doing things to them. And he stripped it and he painted it green. So, there's so many people that you can talk to that have a better kind of understanding of what happened than I do. So I was just, okay, give me that.
Yeah, Grover essentially asked, I think he said, one day he asked you, it's like, hey, am I ever going to get my guitar back? And you told him it was green. He was like, wait, you painted my guitar?
All right, Grover.
That's okay. He was fine with it.
Look at the bright side. It's in a museum now.
Is it?
Yeah, it's been in the Hall of Fame museum for years now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I took the guitar, and that was the first guitar. I believe I chopped out the back to make a floating trem. Mm-hmm. And I shaved away the cutout so that I could reach up high. And, did things like that. Just made a mess out of it. I remember, and that was my main guitar, and that was the one that I was really comfortable with for many years, and I recorded a lot of, what did I record with that? That was Alcatraz and Roth. I recorded a lot of Roth and a lot of my stuff with it. Mm-hmm. And I took it on tour, but I think because the wood was very soft wood, it really started to fall apart. Like, I beat on it, like I'll never forget. I was standing back off the stage at Madison Square Garden with Dave Roth, and we're waiting to go on to start the show, and the lights are on. And this was the first time. I mean, I had been to Madison Square Garden many times as a kid to go see concerts and stuff. Never did I expect, maybe in my fantasies, I thought I'd play there one day, but this was it.
Right.
I mean, and it was sold out. And I'm standing there backstage, so I'm kind of nervous, and I'm kind of warming up and all excited. And I'm whammying the bar, and I'm getting the strings stretched out, and I'm whammying the bar. And I ripped the bar. I guess I was more nervous than I thought. I ripped the bar and the posts that hold the tremolos, that hold the bridge in, ripped them right out of the guitar. And there I was holding not entirely out, but, they came out. And there I was holding the guitar. I look at it, and I'm like, what happened? And I look, and the whole tailpiece was lifted out of the guitar, and there was like splinters and shit. And I look up at Dave, and the lights went down.
So what'd you do?
I panicked.
Give me another guitar.
Another guitar.
Actually, I had some other ones made now. By this time, I had 3 gems, but they weren't the real gems. They were the ones that I had built that were sort of before the gem, but they were exactly like the gem.
Performance ones?
The performance ones, yeah. Those were made right before the tour and in a hurry. And that was another one where I went down to Performance Guitar and I picked out a body and shaped it a bit and then gave it to Patrick Francis Elwood. And him and I can't remember his name right now. Well, they worked to get the guitars put into shape. There was 4 of them, prototype gems, and they were built exactly around my specs. They had all of the little idiosyncrasies that I was always hoping for, because I thought, if I'm going to build a guitar for me, why not make it really for me? So I always wanted 24 frets, and there was no guitars that had whammy bars and 24 frets back then until Grover started doing it, I believe.
Jackson guitars, I think, the Jackson line. Yeah.
Not with the sharp bells, though.
Right.
Right.
So then there was the floating tremolo system that I really wanted that. I can never understand why, when you have the potential for a whammy bar to pull way up high on the strings, they're only go like a half step, because back then that's all you can get. I had never played a guitar where you could whammy more than like a half step. If you futzed with it, maybe you can get a whole step, But I just looked at the guitar. This was the green Meanie, and I noticed that the only thing holding the tremolo system, which was a Floyd Rose at the time, from really going sharp was just the wood in the body. So I actually hammered it out, and then the bar was able to pull really, really sharp.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the story of the green.
You were the first guy that did that, right?
So I'm told.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a couple of other really cool features on that guitar. The pickup configuration, because I really like the Strat sound when you use the 2 single coils, but there was no pickup configurations at that time that could give me that single coil sound, that in-between sound that I love so much. It's kind of like tubey in the in-between neck and middle position and middle and treble position. So when I started working with Hoshino, we devised a 5-position switch that would make those pickups humbuckers when they're full on, and then when you're in the in-between position, there's 2 single coils because it splits the coil. So it's like the perfect balance for me to get all the different tones that I usually like. And then there was a couple of other, smart-ass things I did, like a monkey grip and a couple other things. But so the Green Meanie kind of, it had its beautiful place in the pantheons of my recorded notes. But then I kind of needed to expand, and that's when I designed the Gem. And then once Ibanez started making the Gem, I had no need for anything else. It was the perfect guitar.
Right.
For me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you designed it, right? So.
Yeah, so, why wouldn't it be perfect for me,
Right.
Well, it should be. That's the point, right?
Yeah. For me, it was perfect for a lot of people because I just can't even believe that's one of the greatest, one of the greatest economic booms in my life was the Gem, because for 33 years now, it just doesn't let up. It sells. It's incredibly consistent, even when there was recessions and all sorts of things. And then the RG, that came out when the Gem came out, basically. And it was just a lower end model of the Gem, without the monkey grip and stuff. And then, Ibanez ran with that, started transforming it into all sorts of different things, which you see today.
Yeah, they actually, I was looking at a lefty model that they've got.
Yeah.
The RGs.
They've made a lot of cool RGs.
Yeah, they're cool guitars too. Super cool. So if we can go back to the Dave era, if you don't mind, if we could talk about that for a little while. What amps were you using back then, if you recall?
Yeah. Well, when I joined Dave's band, I was working with Carvin, but I didn't have anything custom. There was no signature things. There was their stock amps, which was the X100B amp. Mm-hmm. And it was good for me at the time, but for Dave's band, it wasn't the thing that was gonna cut it, because now you got to remember, I'm not competing with, but being compared to Edward Van Halen's tone. Uh-huh. He was the guitar behind the voice. Mm-hmm. Everybody knew that combination. So when Dave Roth started singing with a different guitar, the tone had to have, some balls, have some real substance. So I didn't know really what to do, because I was not very versed with amplifiers at the time. I didn't own a lot of amps. I remember I couldn't afford them really, so I wasn't really a big fan of the Marshall sound. Sorry, there, I said it. It always sounded kind of brittle and crunchy. And, I play solos and melodies all night. And an entire night of that, I just, I can't take it. And very inconsistent, too. You buy an old Marshall and you plug it in one night, and the next night it sounds different. So Dave introduced me to this guy, Jose Arredondo. Is that his name?
Yeah, Jose Arredondo. Yep.
Arredondo, yeah. And this guy was just brilliant. He was this little Mexican guy that would take amplifiers and tweak them, and he tweaked all of Edwards Marshalls, so I'm told. And so I bought a bunch of cool Marshalls, good sounding ones to my ears, and I gave them to Jose, and he can take a year to do an amplifier. Whatever he did, because he's passed away now.
Yeah.
He did. I mean, those amps are still just cranking. And he modded through the years 4 amps for me. One of them got stolen, and I actually still have the other 3.
Oh, I was going to ask you that.
I do. I'm parting with those.
I wouldn't.
Dave, I should have you take a look at them, because I haven't really even fired them up in quite a while.
I would love to. I've been through 10 million of those amps. I know them backwards and forwards, so I would love to. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Do you know what he did to them?
No, I know exactly.
Oh, okay.
I've seen almost every incarnation of what he's done to amps over time. I'd be very interested in actually seeing some of those. Be happy to service them for you.
Cool. You know what? I'll tell him to break them out and send them to you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think they're in one rack case. They don't have the body.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the face of the amp in a rack.
Mm-hmm.
But they were great, and they worked really well during the Roth years. But back then, gear was just very different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was much more visceral. Like effects came one at a time in a rack.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted a chorus, you got one rack mount for a chorus. You want a phaser, usually 2 racks. Flanger. So when I was with Dave, I had 3 what looked like giant refrigerators filled with gear and power amps, tons and tons of power amps. And I can tell you the loudest guitar in the world. That was my guitar on the David Lee Roth tour. Because
I saw you on that tour, the first one.
Yeah, I mean on the stage.
Yeah, I bet.
Audience, because for Dave Roth, my guitar just could not be loud enough. It was, the stage was built so there was a row of like 6 of my cabinets on one level, another 6 on another, and another like 6 or 8 on another, and then on the other side of the stage the same thing. And then all along the whole sides of the stage were cabinets, my cabinets, and on both sides. And then in the grate on the floor was the monitors. You couldn't see, the monitors were under the stage, but there was grates so the sound could come through.
Mm-hmm.
And littered throughout this, festooning the stage was these grates with my cabinets underneath them.
Mm.
So you go on that stage, and I remember I just could not believe how loud it was, and I'd like stuff my ears with cotton and all sorts of things before I walked out on that stage. And I had it all gated. So the system at the time would be my guitar, and then it went into some effects, and then it went into a Bradshaw switching system, or then it went into all the racks, and then the power amps, and then the power amps fed it out to all the speakers around the stage. We had 11 tractor trailers for the 11. Yeah. And I'm told that we made it to the Guinness Book of World's Record for having the most lighting cans on a stage.
Wow.
Well, silly trivia, but there you go. So I remember I invited Joe Satriani to one of the sound checks, and he came out on stage, and I had everything gated. So when you're standing on stage, you don't hear any hum, not a note. But if I hit a chord and you're not prepared,
yeah, scare the crap out of you.
You're gonna need a dentist. And poor Joe, I mean, he like jumped like 3 feet off the ground because I went, yeah, this is my rig. Check out the sound. And one night, I made the mistake of forgetting to put my earplugs in when I went out on stage. And I went out there, and I thought that we were being attacked by, like, you know, decibel demons or something. The sound was so piercing and loud that I was trying to stick my elbow in my ear, you know, and it was like I just had to stop playing and go over and just, you know. And Dave didn't wear any ear protection.
Wow.
I don't understand how he was able to do that, but it's rock and roll, I guess. But that was the rig back then, yeah.
That's cool. So we actually have a question from Craig Stofko. He wanted to know, what was your process for learning the Ed material? You know, like the Van Halen material, when you were going on tour with them and stuff.
Well, you can learn it the best you can, but it's never going to sound like Ed would, obviously. I've heard some people come relatively close, but, you know, his fire, his tone, just him, you know, he was a game changer, you know. So I was a fan before I started playing the stuff with Dave. So I knew I wanted to play the parts right, so that, you know, with maybe a couple of embellishments here and there, like if I'm going to do a solo on Hot for Teacher, I would kind of insinuate his solo, but I didn't want to try to do it exact because, you know, I didn't feel that was the appropriate thing. But I knew I needed to get the parts really down. And I learned so much because when you learn somebody's parts that has such great tone like that, like Edward does, it can reshape your playing a bit. So the process was just listening to them and then, learning them. That's it.
That's it.
But when it came time to playing, there was no way I could escape putting my own spin on them. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen. And I just knew there was a fine line where I'm imitating him or I'm retaining my own musical sensibilities. And I chose that because the other one just it didn't make sense to me to go on a stage with Alcatraz and play exactly what Yngwie was playing, or to play exactly what John Sykes played in Whitesnake, or exactly what Edward played on those Van Halen songs. I did my best to respect them, but first of all, I can't play like those guys, and second of all, I'd never thought of it, as far as crossing that line, because I just couldn't. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest, if you're going to learn those cool songs, then they're great songs to play. I mean, it's so fantastic. I played all the great Van Halen songs with Dave. You can choose to try to get them as close to Edward as you like, and that can be helpful, or you put your own spin completely on them. I landed in the middle someplace.
Right. Yeah. No, it's fantastic. Yeah. Thanks for the question.
Well, you really sort of went through hell in a lot of respects. So, first, you have all the unbelievable stuff in the Zappa camp when you were really young. Then you had to step into the Alcatraz Yngwie role, and then you had to play, Edward Van Halen stuff and Sykes and all these great players. It was interesting.
Yeah. It's a twisted road that I've traveled.
Yeah. But somehow in all those things made it you.
Well, anybody that would have gone through it, if they went through the same things, it would sound like them too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because you can't escape that. And if you try to sound like somebody else, you're cheating yourself, first of all. Yeah. Of your own unique potential. And I don't know. Like I say, there was just a line, and you're not going to play like Yngwie. You'll pick up great things, but and they were great gigs, man. I mean, I was so fortunate. They all just fell in my lap beautifully.
That's
easily.
Amazing. Just like
I didn't even go looking for them.
Wow, that's amazing.
But when I knew the Frank gig was kind of like, when he asked me, I was shocked. I was like, really? Because I never expected that. With Alcatraz, I auditioned and they asked me in the band, and with the Crossroads thing, that was another one where they found me and asked me, and with Whitesnake, it was the same thing. I was approached, and then, same thing with Roth. I just got a call one day and it was David Lee Roth. So all those elements fell together perfectly for me. But there was a point, and they were all like high profile kinds of guitar gigs.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate that whatever it is that I ended up laying down, that there was the audience was accepting. They were approving it, so to speak.
Well, let's talk about Crossroads for a second, if you don't mind. The guitar that you used in that. Can you talk about that guitar?
Information from Grover on that, because he gave it to me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. You'd have to ask him, because it's another one of those things I don't quite remember. I think what happened was he had given me that guitar, and I thought it was pretty cool. Maybe he forgot I didn't give it back. That too is in a museum.
Is it?
Yeah. These museums call me and they ask me, and I'm not using them anymore, so I figure, sure, why not? That was a sparkly kind of a Jackson that he had either loaned me or given me, or I was trying out, and I thought it would be great for the movie because of what I was wearing, and also it was kind of red, which represented,
The devil.
sparkly, devilly kind of fire stuff, And there was another one made as a backup because the guitar took a thrashing when I would throw it into the ground and stuff. I don't know if I've ever actually recorded with it. All of that Crossroads stuff was done on the green Meanie. I may have recorded with it, but I don't recall. And then after the filming, both of the guitars vanished, and I don't know what happened to them until one of them recently emerged in a Hard Rock Cafe or a museum. I can't remember, but it's out there. I don't know where the other one is. It's funny. The early days, I just didn't keep track of my guitars. I mean, I had the first prototype 7-string. I recorded the entire Whitesnake record on that, and I gave it to my engineer, and he sold it, and I tried finding it, and the guy wanted like just so much money for it.
Oh.
And the first gem, I gave that away, and I ended up finding it and buying it for an exorbitant fee. I gave away so many guitars. What's some of the other ones? Well, it didn't matter at the time.
Yeah. Well, I saw in your room, you still have the big, is that the double neck with the heart?
The heart. Well, I had 3 of those. 2 of them were red and one of them was purple. One of them is in a museum. The Hard Rock. Sorry, the Hard Rock has that one. Another one I raffled off for charity. Raised a lot of money. And some kid in Sweden has it hanging in his... That was the original one, actually. Has it hanging in his bedroom for $1.
Nice.
But we raised 20 grand for charity for that one. And the other one was just the one that I had as a spare if I was going to use the other ones. So that one I kept.
That's cool. So we got a question from Mully. He asked if you could set the record straight on who played the various parts in Crossroads. He said, let's see. No, that's it. So if you can just set the record straight on that, that would be great.
During the duel scene where I'm a part of it, I played all of the guitars except for the slide. That was done by Ry Cooder. So when you see me dueling Ralph, and he's doing that, that's actually me. So,
oh, wow.
Because Ralph doesn't play the guitar. And it's so funny. I have people all through the years coming up to me going, yeah, he beat you. He's an actor. I taught him how to fake it. Actually, Arlen and myself worked with Ralph. Arlen worked with Ralph for the whole movie. I just worked with him on that. And Arlen was a very key figure in a lot of that behind-the-scene guitar stuff in that movie. So yeah, that's the real story. That's
cool. Well, it was pretty convincing with Ralph on, Yeah, I mean, he did a good job.
Yeah, he worked hard. I wanted to write something because I know that people, when they see guitar playing, it has to look like he's beating me. So that's when I started doing, the riff that goes all over the neck. Mm-hmm. And when I would go to do it, when Jack Butler went to do it, it would be very obvious when it's screwed up. But it's funny little bit of trivia about that. When I was filming that, now it took 12, 15-hour days, if not longer. And it was all shot in Burbank on the lot. And they built the Devil's Church. That whole entire scene, they'd spent a fortune building this Devil's Church and getting all the scenes and filming the entire duel. And that was just for the duel. And at the end, when I had to lose, what I was playing, when we finally finished and they took it into the editing room to edit it all together, the director looked at it and it didn't look obvious enough that I had lost. So they rebuilt the entire church 2 months later, and they got all the people back, all the actors, all the same clothes, they started calling me, "Did you cut your hair?" And do you have those clothes? And and I had to go back for a day to shoot one scene, and I had to re-record the ending, so it was obvious that I lost. And I ended up that last chord. It's like probably 15 guitars, all overdubbed, hitting wrong notes, out of tune, and I fall to my knees. I'm like, okay, is that good enough?
That's great.
I lose bad enough.
You lost.
It was phenomenal to me that they went back and recreated that entire scene for like 10 seconds of music.
They must have done some research or something with people and said it doesn't look obvious enough.
Probably. That's what they get pretty. They test those movies.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So if we can go back a little bit, so I was curious, and then we can jump into some questions. Actually, before I jump into my question, let me go into some of the super chat questions. So Teddy Sakaladeris, and I'm sure I just butchered your last name, Teddy. I'm really sorry about that. He said, always wondered why the switch from PAF Pros to Evo, I guess he meant the Evolutions, and if the middle pickup switch changed too. I always love the middle pickup, as sadly DiMarzio doesn't sell them. I'm not sure if you know the answer to that, but...
Well, I like the earlier pickups, but when I started working with Larry DiMarzio and had the opportunity to custom make a pickup based on what I was hearing, what I wanted, that's always a real coup, It's one of the perks of being Steve Vai, or anybody in my position, is these companies are very interested in what you would like, and they'll build things exactly around what you would like if you're actually exploring. So when I started working with Larry with the Evo, we went through a lot of different pickups to get to that pickup. Now the middle pickup, I can't recall what that was. That's a Larry DiMarzio question or a Mike Mesker question or one of those things. I unfortunately, and I do apologize, I have little retention for those kinds of things.
Gotcha. Okay. Travis Posey gave a super chat. He said, when I graduated high school, I wrote Steve a letter telling him what an influence he was. He sent back a signed picture with a message. Now I'm 43, play professionally, still have a photo, still a fan. That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
That's pretty cool.
I still get fan mail sometimes, and it just stacks up because But every year around Christmas, I sit and I try to answer as many as I can, and it's funny because some of them are pretty old. There was this one I had found behind the bureau that was like 10 years old.
Oh.
And some of them are like 5-6 years old. And I wrote to this guy and I said, you're probably not even living home anymore. You may not get this. And I wrote this kind of nice letter. And then I met somebody about a year after that. And they said, a friend of mine had mentioned to me that his neighbor, he has a friend that has a neighbor. And the neighbor knew that my friend knew me. And the neighbor said to him, you're not going to believe this, but I got this letter from Steve Vai 10 years after I wrote it. And that was the guy that I had written the letter to. I mean, what are the odds, But, yeah, well, I'm glad you got the letter. You didn't have to wait 10 years.
That's funny. So I was going to ask and mention to you a funny story, actually. Well, at least it's funny for me, and then I'm circling back in life to have you on our show. Because you were actually, I believe, you were my first concert that I saw when I was 12. I went to see Frank Zappa for the Shut Up and Play Your Guitar tour. And I believe you were on tour with him with Terry Bozzio on drums, I believe.
I wasn't in the band with Terry. I joined Frank's band in '80.
So it was definitely in '80. So maybe Terry Bozzio wasn't playing with you guys, but it was. Yeah, did you play on that tour, the Shut Up and Play Your Guitar tour?
Well, I don't recall a tour called "Shut Up and Play Your Guitar." It was because Frank released so many records. It was the "You Are What You Is" tour was the first one that I played on. It was 1980, and I played 80, 81, and 82.
Gotcha. Yeah, it was 1980. It was in South Florida. It was a place called the Sunrise Musical Theater, I believe. So
Yeah, I was there.
okay, yeah,
I had to have Vinny on drums.
okay. So it was Vinny on drums. Yeah, I was so young, but I just remember I had the shirt.
Yeah. You are that guy.
Exactly. It's me. So
Or some progressive parents taking you to a Zappa concert at 12.
it was actually my aunt and uncle. They took us, and the whole time that we were there, they were like, "You smell that pot? You smell that? Those dirty people." But I remember, but
had to go to Madison Square Garden and see these great rock concerts like Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, and Black Sabbath. The place reeked of dope.
yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, I remember.
Did you see them?
it's
Did you?
funny.
God, sorry, Dave.
Sorry, it's funny. On this last Black Sabbath tour that was done, they played the sports arena here, and I went to see that show. And when I walked in the sports arena, it reminded me entirely of when I was a kid going to see shows, because it was this dank old arena that just smelled of beer and hot dogs and stuff and mold. And you walk in, and then you smelled the pot.
Yeah.
It was just like flashback to when I was a child.
Yeah.
Going to see shows. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
It's a great show.
Yeah, good show.
Contact high. I've done shows where the people in the front were all smoking, and it was, after 2 hours of smelling it, you're high, man. You don't want to hear a nice Steve Vai play the guitar.
That's too funny. So I know we only have a few more minutes with you, and I want to be respectful of your time. So
You usually go longer than an hour and a half. I'm happy to hang for a while.
sure, if you tell me when you're ready to roll, okay? Because we want to. We know you're busy, dude.
Questions?
Yeah, I'll get to some questions here. So there was a question from Caleb from the band Nerd Halen. Asked, was the dive-bombed tobacco right at the end of Tobacco Road on purpose or by accident? He said, if you listen to the song, right as Dave says the word tobacco, you do a dive bomb, and it sounds like tobacco.
Yeah, that's one of those phenomenons that happened that I still marvel at, and was pointing it out to my son recently. I don't know how that happened. That was one of those freak things, and the guitar sounds like it's saying tobacco right when he says it. And I've listened to it by itself, and I'm like, that freaking guitar is saying tobacco. And what happened was, I was just doing a dive bomb, and the strings magnetized to the pickup.
Yeah.
Go, and they make a sound that's like, and then when you pull up on them, they go. They make the sound that's like when they pop off of the pickup, because they're metal, so they get magnetized. And in some weird phenomenon of audio nature, that happened. So no, that it was the dive bomb was on purpose, but for me to get the guitar to say the word tobacco like that again. Well, actually, I've tried it. There's another way to do it. I don't have my amplifier, but you can set up right now. But if you take the trem bar and you just bring it down a little bit, and you see how the string is getting
Slackened.
slack. But if you do this, you just hold it just so it's not quite slack enough to attach onto the string, and you go and you push that in the right spot. It goes back.
That's awesome.
Too much time on their hands. Now I'm trying to get it to say marijuana. These days.
Oh man. We got some other questions from Vincent Moretti. Thanks for the super chat. He says, "Hi Mark, Dave, Steve. I recently saw Queen for the first time. Brian May was remarkable. I also just saw him last Saturday, and he was amazing." He says, "You recently wrote a very nice tribute to him. What is it about him as a musician that makes him so special?"
He has a fine sophistication in his arrangements. He has real quality, integrity, rock sensibilities. He has a phenomenal, this is from my taste, phenomenal ear for actual music. His inner ear constructed that amazing tone that he has, and it's always sounded great. And it's always, and just the fact that he was able to build that guitar when he was young, the Red Special, that was hand built by him. So it has a myriad tones to it. But all these tones and everything in his guitar and his amp are just one dimension. It all comes from his fingers and his mind. I played with Brian on a lot of occasions, and he always sounds like Brian. Matter of fact, I tell this story, and I think I even told it in one of the posts. When I first moved out to LA, I didn't know anybody. Nobody knew me. I was working for Frank. Wasn't even in the band yet. And I went to the Rainbow. Now I studied Queen. Queen had a tremendous impact. It was one of the first bands I've seen. And there was something, when you find music that when you're an adolescent, when you're going through those changes, when you're starting to develop your own independence, your own perspective, the hormones are kicking in. Sometimes there's a lot of you start feeling pressure against people who are trying to make you be a certain way, and you can get pretty intense, and I had various things happen to me that could be considered somewhat traumatic. And you look for something that gives you an opportunity to escape that feels good, And when I heard Queen and all that great music of the 70s, Led Zeppelin and Queen, really the ones, it just was, and Elton John, and Alice Cooper, I was that kind of a teenager. It held a special place that never goes away. And lucky for me, they were all absolutely brilliant musicians. That band, there's nothing like it. There's nothing even remotely like it. It was like a paradigm shift for me, at least. And what Brian was doing, and the way the stars came together with him and the band and with Freddie, and Brian's whole overview of sound and guitar parts, this just was nothing like it, And I remember when I first moved out to California and I went to the Rainbow, he was standing at the bar. I just could not believe it, because just a few years earlier I was sitting in my bedroom listening, and I went up to him and I started talking to him, and he was so kind. It's just so absolutely kind and nice. I'm like, is this, it's surreal.
Mm-hmm.
He invited me to a Queen rehearsal the next day.
Wow.
And I went down, Zoetrope Studios, and there was Freddie, and there's everybody, and I'm this young, 20-year-old kid. And Brian's being really nice, and he shows me and there was the guitar, and I'm like, is that it? He goes, yeah, it's the only guitar I play. And he says to me, you want to try it? I'm like, I can't believe it. So of course I played his guitar through his rig and his amplifiers, and to my chagrin, it didn't sound anything like Brian May. I couldn't play the guitar. It was impossible. It's like the neck is like a bat. I mean, I couldn't even get my hands around it, and my big fingers, and the action was low, and I just couldn't play it really. But it was interesting to see that he got such a heavy, thick, rich, beautiful sound out of it. And his vibrato, is a complete class act. he vibrates. I just did a gig with him recently, and I'm watching him, and he grabs whole chords and does the most beautiful, perfect vibrato with them, and every note sings, and he still has that beautiful tone in his fingers. And I've done gigs with him, and I remember on a G3 tour, we invited him out, and Joe and I are playing, and Brian comes out, and he just hit a few notes, and we just look at each other and go, oh my God, it's Brian May, all of that stuff is fantastic, but if it doesn't come with a musical ear, it's almost for naught. And Brian has a superior musical ear. Every one of his solos is a melody. It speaks like a melody, and
it's a piece. It's
a piece of music on, I think it's a night at the opera. It's called Good Company, and it's one of these kind of quirky little songs that they did occasionally. But Brian overdubbed this guitar orchestra on it that sounds like a ragtime band. And to this day, I'm the people who hear it and get it see the absolute brilliance in it, the uniqueness. There's nothing like it. I don't know how he did it. I've asked him, and he just says, oh, I went in a little bit before sessions each day when we were making the record, and I fooled around. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? It's an iconic construction of sounds derived from a guitar in a way that just is unique and unearthly and quirky. So these things add up.
Yeah, he's so unique. Yeah, especially seeing him live just recently, just last week, was amazing. That was my son's first concert.
Yeah, he's really good for you.
Yeah,
good for you. I did a gig with him just recently, Starmus, which is this amazing 5-day science music festival in Europe. It was held in Zurich, and it was attended to by some of the greatest scientists in the world. There was 12 Nobel laureates there, and it was a celebration of I think it was Apollo 11 that went to the moon and landed. Buzz Aldrin was there, and there was, I think, 6 or 7 astronauts and many people that were on that mission, and Elon Musk, and all of these incredible scientists. And there was an orchestra, and there was a music component. And this festival was put together by this astrophysicist, Garrick Israelian, and Brian, because Brian's an astrophysicist. He has his doctorate. And also Brian Eno and Peter Gabriel. So they were at the foundation of this fair. And it's extraordinary. I highly recommend. It's like a 5-day festival where you go and you listen to these people speak, and there's music. So the concert was, Rick Wakeman was there this year, and he came out and played with the orchestra, and then I did one of my songs, and then Hans Zimmer came, and he was fantastic. He was just amazing. We did about an hour of his music with the orchestra, with these beautiful, graphics in the background. And it was funny because I got handed a stack of Hans Zimmer guitar parts that I had to read. I'm a pretty good reader, so I nailed it, and it was just fantastic. It wasn't very difficult. Thank God. But the notes just worked so beautifully with this score. I mean, it's Hans Zimmer, and then Brian came out, and we did 3 Queen songs, and he gave me the solos.
Wow.
Forever, and We Are the Champions, and 39, and it's always a pleasure to play with Brian.
Wow, that's amazing.
Excellent. Amazing.
I've got some other super chat questions. So from Joseph L. Dean, thanks for the contribution. He says, Steve, do you record yourself when you're noodling? And what's your favorite method of trying to remember new riffs or parts of songs when you're just playing around?
Well, I highly recommend documenting your inspirations somehow. And I've always done this ever since I was a kid. I've always, whether it was with a cassette player or DATs when they came along, but now it's all on my iPhone. And I highly recommend doing this because here's what happens, I believe. Everybody, I believe, actually, I think it's a fact. Everybody is uniquely creative. They can be. They have the potential to be completely unique at their creativity. And this is a good thing. This is what makes the world go round, you know? But unfortunately, a lot of the messages from the outside world, if you listen to these messages and you believe them, it can cut at the root of your creativity, because they can lead you to believe, or to at least create thoughts in your own mind. This is impossible. How can I do this? How can I achieve this? I'm not good enough. Or there's fear. There's fear of failing. There's not fitting in. But your unique ear, your unique inner ear, requires you to be completely transparent. And what happens a lot of times, and the person that asked this question may, if he's a musician, may occasionally come across what feels like a really good idea. So if you're playing and you come across something that has an energy in it, or it's something that just makes you kind of, what is that? Or there's something that connects, when you're connecting with your unique creativity, because it just feels good, and if you're doing something and it's not right, you move to something else, you sift through pros and cons and whatever. But a lot of times, once your unique and creative and brilliant, usually, idea arises in you, it gets shut down by yourself, by your own, which says things. It's not good enough. I mean, you can find all sorts of, if you're able to see, which most people can't, the voice in their head that's constantly talking to them and telling them these things, they'd realize that they're cutting themselves short of their own creative potential. So what I've noticed is, when I get that little feeling of an idea, I have to capture it somehow. I have to document it, whether I write it on manuscript paper, or I speak it into an iPhone, or I play it. Because don't underestimate the power of your inspiration. If you're doing, it doesn't have to be music, it could be anything. If you're doing something and you feel an aha moment, somehow capture the seed of what that is. So like what I'll do is, I have thousands and thousands of snippets from the time I was like 13 of little ideas. And I'll go back, and because they'll feel good to me, and I'll go back and listen to them. And when you go back and listen, you can be right back into that place of feeling the inspiration of where that riff or that melody or that idea wanted to go. So I, for instance, have, where is it? Oh, and every night before I go to bed, I've got a guitar by the bed. I play something and I record it. I think this is one I did last night. And here's the thing, it doesn't have to sound good. And I'm messing up constantly because I'm listening for it, And this is how I do my music, because then I come back and I've got these ideas that are just begging me, every time I walk past them on the shelf, they're like reaching out and going, finish me. But only 1/100th of them will ever get finished. Oh, okay, I remember this. Just kind of a simple rock riff. Okay, now that's just the riff, and I captured it. For me, that's mediocre at best.
That's cool. I mean, that's awesome.
There's some really cool ones. I don't want to bore you with going through this stuff, but
trust me, that's not boring.
But it's good to know that it doesn't matter. I mean, let me see if I can find something where I'm really struggling to find the melody. Not struggling, just putting the radar out for the universe to kind of tell you what the melody should be. Okay. Let me see. I don't know what I'm doing here. That doesn't sound like a song. Maybe I'm tuning. Oh, I'm shitting because I lost what it was. Okay, so you hear me struggling through it, right?
Right.
But I can listen to that right now, and I can hear that as a full-blown orchestra piece. Don't see the way, you know, so the inspiration is there, and now you just go, I'll never do anything with it because there's thousands of them. But let me see if there's another one here. So maybe I can find one. It's probably because I have to dump them off my phone, but there may be some pieces on here that I don't have any that actually did turn into songs that I recorded, so you can actually hear the beginning of them.
Right.
So always try to capture an idea and just capture it, because if you're anything like me, you'll forget it. It just goes away.
Yeah.
Yep.
Unless it's compelling.
That's great advice. So a friend of mine, Jason McNamara, wanted me to mention the GoPro video that he shot of you in Tokyo.
Yep, good old Jason.
Yeah. So Jason's cool. He said it's got over 600,000 views. So that's a cool. I've seen it.
Well, he figured. Yeah, he came in to one of the shows, and he had this system with he would plant these GoPros all around the place, and then record the show. And he's a great editor. So he did a bunch of stuff and sent me some things, and he did a great job. Yeah.
That's cool. Very cool. Let me go to the questions. So we had Waterford Giant said, Steve Vai, nothing better. Love your show, Mark and Dave. Just wanted to say thank you. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. So one other question I wanted to ask you, Steve, because I know that you were recently, there was a video of you with bees. Do you still work with bees and as a hobby? Is that still something of your hobby of yours?
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I originally started it because we moved into a property that was vacant for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So all the gardens were dead, and I just did a little research, and I found out that honeybees are a really great way to pollinate. And they're not hard. They're easy to, and they're fascinating, you know? So I started to study a little bit about them, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to get a hive. And I called a local bee man, and he brought over a swarm, and I just got into the culture. It was a hobby. But at one point, I had like 7 colonies, and one year we got like 1,000 pounds of honey.
Wow.
And then the colony collapse kicked in, and I ended up losing a lot of the hives, and I kind of didn't have a honey flow for some years. But they're coming back. You know, the bees are starting to come back. They're up 25%. So for my birthday, Christmas, my boys bought me one of those flow hives. You know, that you can see them. That they're these new kinds of beehives where anybody can have one, and you just turn a knob and honey comes out.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Because the way it's conventionally done is you have the big box, and it's got frames, and you take the frame out, and you
have to scrape it.
Spins, and then the honey drips down, and you strain it, and then you put it in bottles. But these guys, these brilliant designers, came up with this idea to create this hive that when you turn the handle, this whole mechanism lifts up and separates from the cells, the cappings, so the honey comes right out. So we got that. We have one of those, and I have a regular hive, and so I still do it. Yeah.
Huh, cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I was just curious because I think that's a good thing for the environment. People thinking about the environment these days. What's that?
It's an easy, fun hobby, and it is really great for the environment. And it's not dangerous. You can't be stupid. You know, honeybees are not as aggressive as people think. I mean, you really got to piss them off. But once you piss them off, you get out of the way.
How you doing on time? You good?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. I was curious, a couple things that I saw on your gem recently, and I wanted to see if you could talk about it. So you had a magnetic strip on the back of the neck, or the headstock, where you were holding like your tools, it looked like.
Yeah.
And then also it had these tuners that looked like, there you go.
Yeah.
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 That's a Thomas Nordig special. Brilliant. Thomas comes up with all these little things that are just so perfect. Like what it is I don't know if you can see it. It's just a metal thing,
Yeah.
Right.
you know, it's a metal strip, and then the wrench for tuning and stuff, and the bridge just go right there, because I always need it. I'm always adjusting. And listen, if there's any really great luthiers out there listening to me right now, could somebody please invent a guitar that has a whammy bar that doesn't require a tool to do anything? Because this is getting old. Find a screw to undo the nut, here. Come on, we could do better than that. You guys are geniuses. You figure it out. Come on, Dave. I know you can. I've tried. I can't. But that and also, oh well, I'm not going to mention anything. But we have some surprises coming up with Ibanez. Some nice surprises. But having that there is really helpful and useful. And Thomas made this too. He's never marketed it. I know he should, because it's really brilliant. He's like Mr. Velcro. He's like really, it's like a running joke that Thomas is so into Velcro. So he made this thing for me where it's a piece of Velcro, and this is a pick holder. And then he put a piece of Velcro on the back of it, and just there. So all my picks, when I'm playing, they're just right there.
Nice. Exactly. And then the other thing that I saw was your tuners on the guitar. One of them had these knobs that look like
Yeah.
like a Telecaster knob.
Yeah. You want me to go get it?
No, you know. I mean, if you want to. It was super cool, Dave. Did you ever see what I'm talking about?
Yes, I did see it. I held it. I played it.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, it was at Sweetwater, right?
Yeah. Dave Black, if you're watching, you were interested in this, so here it comes.
Oh, that's right. Dave Black and I were talking about this, actually.
Yeah.
That's why I was intrigued. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And this is where Steve Vai falls really short again. And I'm apologizing to whoever makes them, because I can't remember what they are right now. But I'm going to have Thomas, you know what? I'm going to ask Thomas right now. There's so many companies I work with for little things like this, I just forget. Because they're the greatest tuning pegs.
Yeah, I saw them. I'm like, that is really interesting looking. It caught my eye, and then I was talking, like you mentioned.
Whoa. Yeah, they're substantial. They have a great grip. You can grab them just the way they, and they're they have various lockings on them, so that once you get in tune, you can lock them down. They just feel good, and like a lot of times, with tuners, you move it a bit, and it doesn't really do anything. There's like some play. Mm-hmm. There's no play in these things. They're just fantastic. And I'm going to find the name of the company that makes them and let you know. And this is Graphtech.
Oh, Graphtech makes them.
Oh, it's the ratio tuners, isn't it? It's the it's the Graphtech makes these so each string has a different tuning ratio. So there's no play, there's no nothing. It's really cool. But I hadn't seen them with that button on the end. So check it out.
Yeah, that's super unique. So you've been a locking tremolo guy for a long time. Yeah. So what do you think of these products that upgrade the tremolos, like these big blocks or using brass in them, or like all these things. Do you use that kind of stuff, or I'm curious?
I haven't really experimented much with them. The perfect tremolo system hasn't been invented yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it. I hope I live to see it. But are you referring to? There's another Thomas special.
Or Velcro?
Velcro. Come on. Who the hell wants to sit there and take out all the screws, right? When you got to change a string. Bad design.
Yeah.
And then you drop one of those screws, and the carpet eats it just the way it eats picks.
Into the abyss.
Into the abyss. You get my. So, under the hood of my car, I use these trem setters, which keep the guitar from floating. It still floats, but it's not so impossible to tune. When you have a floating bridge, tuning it is,
it's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare because the tension changes the string tension, and you're out of tune once you turn one tuning peg a little bit. So this trem setter really takes about 85% of that away. The only drag about it is it has to be set up properly. You need to have the right. This is why I'm always check. I have all my guitars before the show, and I got to check them because this stuff varies. So that has to be completely even. The way that when the block kisses the tip of the thing here.
Mm-hmm.
Little piece. And I think you're referring to something that people are making these blocks out of something different.
Yeah, they make them out.
I haven't tried them. I just use this. But what's the purpose of that?
I've heard, people have said that they use it for more sustain,
fatter tone.
Fatter tone. Yeah, I'm not sure. What we wanted. Was curious what you thought about it.
To be perfectly honest, there's a lot of moving parts in what creates the tone, and through the years, as you might have noticed, and the evolution of guitar gear has changed. It's becoming really refined. So like the nuts are changed so that it's better tone and longer sustain. The frets are changed so there's better tone and longer sustain. And pickups, the way the pickups are mounted, the color of the guitar, even I've heard has some kind of resonant power. The block, the tailpiece block and all this.
Mm-hmm.
Many of these changes are too minute for me to hear, and I used to feel like I needed to follow along and agree when something came out that supposedly sounded so much bigger and so much better, but I just don't know how you can tell because there's so many variables when you plug your guitar in from one day to the next. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I just, I'll try different things, but I don't fool myself into thinking something sounds better when it's basically a concept that's going to become folklore
mm-hmm.
and is actually just hype. Now, I'm not saying that's the case with with everything. Obviously, it may very well be, but frankly, I just don't understand how the different block, and maybe somebody could explain it to me and show me so I could hear it, how changing that block is going to change much of anything, because that's not where the string lives. The string is cut off where it gets clamped down,
mm-hmm.
and there's nothing that's going to be resonating it. I don't know. I've never really heard the difference, and I could be completely wrong, but I'm being honest.
No, I mean there's.
Whenever I say like this, people write in, "Oh, you doesn't know what he's talking about," and whatever. And yeah, I don't know what I'm.
No, you've
just
only.
Listen.
Yeah, I mean everybody has their own ear. Just like you said, listen and see if you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I was just curious. The other thing I wanted to go back to. What? Sorry, Steve.
I will have to try what you're talking about.
Yeah, give it a shot.
They are, and maybe it'll sound different. I would be shocked, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, it'll change the guitar cable.
Guitar cables?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables. You know,
a lot of variables.
Yeah. A lot of variables. So and the biggest variable is the room you play in. Probably each night, the room you're playing in sounds completely different.
Completely different.
Yeah.
The material that's used on the floor of the stage changes everything. Everything. Yeah. Stuff like that, you know. I mean, I can walk into a venue and look at the room, and I do it all the time. And I look at what the walls are made out of, what if it's a gloss finish, you know, and you know if there's seats or fabric, if it's a wooden floor or a metal floor, kind of like a carpet, or all of these things. How far away the back wall is, that's just the room, and that has a huge impact on the sound. And when you're standing on stage and you hit a chord, the sound of the floor is much more discernible to me than the block in the guitar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or the what the nut is made out of. You know, this is like an overwhelming, obvious sound challenge or whatever. And you could be using the same amps, same guitar, same everything night after night, and it's very different. It acts different. It speaks different. It absorbs differently. You just have to. Through the years, it used to drive me mad, you know, because I'd be like, "Where's my tone? Where's the tone?" And then one night it'd be really great, and then the other night it'd be like, you know, and I had come to realize that there was many moving parts that determine what that is. Now I say totally different, but of course it's not totally different. It's just the ambience that carries the tone is very different. So what I do now, and this is good advice actually for people who are starting to experience these massive sound swings from venue to venue. Just make believe it sounds great. That's what I do. I just make believe it sounds incredible.
And let it go.
And let it go. And
yeah.
Because that takes away my anxiety for thinking that it has to be better and it sucks. And then I start liking it. You start playing with what you have, which is all you can ever do anyway. You know, you get on a stage, the amp isn't delivering that night, if the power is different, which happens every venue. Every venue. Go to Europe, you've got transformers that changes the power to the amp, which it's nuanced differences. And when you're really honed in on expecting something particular to come out when you put your fingers on the instrument, you want to at least know that everything you did is solid. You know, that's why I liked working with Carvin. Whatever. Those Carvin Legacy amps, every night they were completely consistent for some reason, you know? And my guitars, I mean, like when I pick up Flow or Evo, I know what's going to come out. I know that there's an integrity of sound there. But as far as all the other moving parts, you just got to get used to accepting that they change the sounds drastically, and they can change your mood. And that's what you got to be careful of. Because then you're compromising your performance and your show, and the fact that you're playing for people who want to see you at your best, that's being compromised because you're buying into the fact that the stage just sounds completely different. I mean, I just did a benefit show, and I won't mention where or anything, but it was a very difficult stage. You couldn't. Even at the camp, when I was doing the camp, little room we were playing in, it was the worst acoustics. You're hearing everything splattering back onto the stage, and you could actually be turned up really loud and not hear what you're playing. That's what a room can do. So I used to get very disturbed at this, and it would affect the way I was playing and the way I was communicating. So the reason why I said I just make believe it sounds great because that works. that takes for me at least, it takes the edge off of, worrying, and you're only going to be able to play with what's there anyway. It's like picking up a clean Strat when you're used to playing through a wall of distorted amps. You have to adjust. So
yeah. Do you use a voltage regulator at all, like a brown box or a variac or anything to keep your voltage steady every night when you're going to different venues? Or
yeah, we have those all over. I use them in the studio, and what is it called? Hang on 1 second. Well, there's different kind, but I use Furman gear. It's fantastic because they have all sorts of brick walls for energy spikes. If you're going to go to Europe, you really want to. Everything has to be in a converter because voltages fluctuate, and if you're at 220, you got to dither it down. So we have a whole slew of gear that kind of limits the electric to be exactly what the amp wants.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
But Furman conditioners, they're really good.
Gotcha. We got a question from the Tone King. He says, can you ask Steve his thoughts on the X100B versus the Carvin Legacy? He used the 100B for many years before the Legacy. Curious to know if he still digs the 100B.
I haven't used a 100B since way before the Legacy. Like I said, it was what I had at the time. I thought it was pretty good, but it's nothing like the Legacy. The Legacy is a totally different beast.
Absolutely.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask, your Blu-ray that's coming out, I wanted to get to that as well. Stillness in Motion. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. I did a pretty robust tour in 2012 for the Story of Light. It was like a year and a half or 2 years, and we did 256 appointments, so to speak, gigs and stuff, in 52 countries. And I had these various ideas on like flying out a film crew and capturing a day on the road. And I never really got around to it because I couldn't make it logistically work. But at the end of the tour, I decided to collect all of the footage that everybody had kind of put together or had taken. And I had some great people. Our drum tech, Chris Huber, is like a videologist, and he loves to go around and take videos of stuff and while on tour and then edit. He gave me a ton of stuff. I got all the clips from all the band guys. I had a ton of my stuff. Friends and fans sent stuff and whatever. And so I made this DVD, and the bulk of it is a live show at the Nokia in Los Angeles while we were on that tour. It was the 49th show of that tour. So you get there's the whole show, and then there's 3 hours and over, I think it's like 3 hours and 45 minutes of all this bonus footage, and the space between the notes. And I got to say, that's one of my favorite accomplishments because I edited the whole thing myself, and I love doing it, and I love watching it because it's a real snapshot into touring, and being on tour. And when I tour with my band, we just have a great time. We really love each other, and we love playing with each other. And my family would come out on tour, and we go out and do things. So I kind of made this for people interested in that kind of thing. But it was released on DVD back in, I think it was 2015. And it needed to be on Blu-ray, but at the time I was working with Sony, it was just not cost effective to them. So the rights reverted back to me, and I decided to bite the bullet and make this beautiful package.
Oh, nice.
There it is. And it's got 2 Blu-rays in it. and 2 CDs. And it's got this map that we made of the world and every territory that we went to, and with a, connecting the dots. So it's got the concert in Blu-ray. It's got the space between the notes in Blu-ray, and then it has 2 CDs of the audio from the concert. And, of course, any label would think I was insane to release a DVD. And I am a label, and I think I'm insane because it just doesn't, it's just a labor of love, and you lose a lot of money. But I just wanted it out there for the fans that would write and say, I like this, but it's not a Blu-ray, so I'm not watching it.
That happens.
The 13th of this month, and yeah, it's cool. And I'm doing little Instagram posts of little snippets from the space between the notes.
Cool. Yeah. Look forward to getting that. You guys check it out when it comes out. What's that?
A few more questions?
Yeah. Well, one question I wanted to ask you, and then I'll jump into some other questions real quickly from other people. I saw you at NAMM at the Ultimate Jam Night with the David Lee Roth Band, and with Jeff Soto, I think, was singing.
Jeff Scott's.
Yeah, which was fantastic. So I wanted to ask you, I'd feel like remiss if I didn't ask you, is there any possibility of you doing anything further with that?
I don't know. These days, I only move instinctually in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever I'm doing at any given time, and whatever I feel compelled to do at that moment, that's what I'm doing. And so I don't know. It was a great experience the first time around with Dave and Billy and Greg, and even when Matt was in the band. I don't know, because it doesn't. It almost feels like the train has left the station in a sense. Mm. But you never can tell. We talk about it. We kick the idea around. Occasionally, Dave and I have spoken about it, and it's just logistically it's difficult because everybody's got careers now. I mean, Billy is constantly working. He's like a unbelievable road hog.
Yeah, he's always on the road.
And Greg Bissonette is out with Ringo all the time, or he's doing studio work, and I've got all these things I'm balancing. Right now, the most important thing to me is the music that I hear in my head that I want to make, and I'm just committed to making as much of it as I can before I die. And for those who like it, and yeah, so I don't know.
No, that's great. That's great. It was great seeing you. I was front row right there, so it was awesome to see that. So,
he was that guy.
I was that guy. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
They just had they had these girls dancing in front on the stage. I was like, move the girls. I want to see Steve. It's like, it's very rarely that I would say that, but
well, 12 years old, and match.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, no, back then it was like 80% of the audience was teenage girls in their pajamas,
mm-hmm.
or up there. It was a very, very rock star period. Time to be a rock star.
Yeah, you picked a good time. You picked a good time.
In the 80s, David Lee Roth, yeah.
Yeah, the pinnacle.
Totally.
Times to write a book, but I'll never do it.
No, you won't? Nah, that's not in the cards. We did have one.
I don't know. It's all in the moment, so.
Right. Last question for you. I'll give it to Soda. He said, Steve, what trem stopper do you use? Because I know you showed it, but I don't know if you said what it was.
He's not going to have the answer for this.
I'm terrible at doing tech interviews. I'm just like, give it to me. Does it work? Okay, get out of the way. I don't know if they're even if you can find them these days, but I can't see the brand. I'm going to be flayed for this, but you know what? Let me ask Thomas. Maybe he knows.
Okay.
Well, here's some great here's something cool. The tissue in the springs.
Yeah.
You ever try that? This has I can guarantee you that doing this has much more of an impact on the sound than any kind of iron or metal or gold or silver bridge, because when you hit a note, all of the springs are clanking and the pickups pick it up, and you hear this huge reverberant sound every time you hit a chord or a note. So I just stick this in there and Velcro it on, and it tightens up your sound tremendously. Now, that I can buy. You know what I mean?
I think I've heard they also have noiseless springs, supposedly.
It's the cavity that resonates.
Oh, it's the cavity. I see. Gotcha.
Second.
That's cool.
Hey, Thomas, do you know the company that makes the trem setter that I use in my guitars?
Cool. Well,
That's the best, guys.
All right. Well, we'll wait to see if you can get an answer on that. And in the meantime, I think we've gotten a lot of questions already answered from a lot of people. Dave, unless you see any questions that we've missed.
I see one super chat here that just says, Steve, can you, from WCM 5150, Steve, can you get Eric Johnson again for the next VAI Academy?
Good idea. It's interesting. I was actually thinking, honest to God, I was thinking about the VAI Academy, the next one, and I thought about asking Eric, because he's such a great guy, and he's such a great player, and he was really loved last time. What other suggestions for camp clinicians do we have out there?
How about Eric Gales?
Oh, he's great. My goodness.
Yeah.
Video of him the other day, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, you saw that with Joe Bonamassa?
Yeah, very connected.
He has a certain danger to his playing, too. There's that not afraid to really put this aggression and danger into the notes he's choosing.
Yes, and he's very animated, and I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is animated. Yeah, very animated.
Yeah, playing that guitar all backwards.
Totally.
I believe Ibanez. I'm not sure if they still make them. Yeah, I think Ibanez made those for me. but he doesn't. Thomas doesn't know if he makes them. I'm referring to the trem stoppers.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I want to thank you, Steve, for coming on. It was fantastic to have you on. You're so cool. And I also want to mention to everybody, check out Sweetwater. Go to sweetwater.com. Check out their sales. You can buy Gem guitars, all Steve's gear there as well. They're running some sales. And
I would mention, if you're a musician and you want to go on a vacation, go to Sweetwater. Actually haven't been there. I was stunned when I was there last. How absolutely, it's like acres and acres of the coolest gear, and you got to check it out if you get a chance. It's in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So, I interrupted. Sorry.
No, I was just there.
Okay.
It was great. Yeah, Sweetwater is a really cool place. One last question for Steve. There's a guy, he says, Johnny Bean asked, Jay Hannon says he's friends with Mike Taft and an ex-Ibanez in Dorsey. Are there any plans on putting out a Made in Japan universe again? He has a 1991 and 2000 and loves them.
There's no plans right now. A lot of that has to do with the demands. And did he mention a universe? Did he say?
Yeah, the Made in Japan universe. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no plans right now, but the way that these things get changed a lot of times is when enough people mention something that they would really like. So if you mentioned Ibanez, it's just another kind of tap on the shoulder. So maybe we'll do it. Yeah, but right now we don't have any plans.
Okay.
One other thing I want to say.
Sure.
Because this is about tone talk.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the tone that you're gonna come out, that's gonna come out of your hands and out of your amplifier, the quality of that tone is based on the way you're hearing it in your head. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is, you can pick up an instrument and just play with what's there, and say, okay, this is what I have, and this is what it sounds like, and now I'm going to play, and I know these scales, and I, I'm my ear. Well, basically, they're not listening to their ear; they're listening to their mind. And when you do that, you can come up with a lot of intellectual meandering and a lot of intellectual type playing, and that's fine for some. If it's fine for you, it's fine. But like the quality of a melody, the quality of your tone is based on how you're hearing it in your head. So if you want to improve your tone, you have to hear what you want in your head. Because a lot of times you'll plug in, you'll say, oh, that sounds good, or that doesn't sound good. But if you know more of what you're looking for, the cooperative components will start to sort of come on your radar. Mm-hmm. But the real quality of your tone, the way, regardless of whether the amp is clean or what pickups you're using, whatever the setup is, the integrity of your tone is in the way that you hit the string. It's in the way that you hear yourself. It's the way that you feel yourself hitting the string, connecting. And this has to do with so many variables, like where you're picking, how the angle of the pick, how hard you're picking, how hard it is, how hard you're hitting the note. But all of those things are a representation of your state of mind. If you're kind of like concerned and you're not quite sure and you're being a little wimpy about it, it's what you're going to sound like. Mm-hmm. So if you can sort of find an attitude in yourself or a sound, and go there with your visualization, then that's how you improve. That's actually, as far as I could tell, this is how you improve, because you have to be able to imagine things that are just a little out of your reach right now, and then if you hold on to that, they have to come out. Your hands will automatically find that position, and your fingers will start to move in a way. I still work on this all the time, because you can never stop developing your tone if you're interested in it. Mm-hmm. And we all see it. We see great players, when they get older, they just lose the mojo. They a lot of times they lose the tone. And a lot of that is, I believe, because I've seen it in myself. It's the lack of focus on it. It's not the lack of focus. It's the lack of enthusiasm to continue to evolve yourself. That can happen, and it doesn't need to happen, because all you got to keep in mind is how much fun it is and how exciting it is to hear something, and then in your mind, whether it's a melody or a tone, or it's a visualization of a gig, like you asked me about Generation X or anything that I've done, it always kind of starts with an idea, and then you cultivate it, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but experiment with this idea, and what that is you don't worry about the how. You don't worry about how things are going to get done. You just imagine what it is that you would like to see be the goal. And then you hold on to that. And then eventually the cooperative components they're always there, but you don't have access to them unless you know that you're going towards something with the positive kind of a momentum. So I love talking about gear. Obviously, I'm not as nerdy when it comes to gear as most people might think. Little black dot and orchestration, you'll see a real nerd. And I I think that the study of gear and all the amplifiers and preamps and all the components in the physical world are, they have their place, and they also can be exciting and interesting. But more focus needs to be put on the imagination, in the actual creating in your mind what it is you want your goal to be. And then the way that you achieve any goal is to imagine what it feels like to have already achieved it. But you really have to feel it. It can't be a fantasy, an ego fantasy, which is very easy to masquerade as an inspired idea. They sound different in your head. One of them has tension in it. I need to be this. Until I'm famous, until I've people know how great I am, until I've got the best band, the right relationships, the right record deal, until I have these things, I'm not gonna be happy, and that's actually upside down thinking, because if you're satisfied with where you're at, everything else is like gravy, and when you're satisfied with where you're at, the feeling of progressing it's a joyful, it's an exciting idea. That's how you know that you're following your instincts as opposed to your egoic fantasies that will never happen. And if they do, then God forbid, because you reckon they're usually the worst thing for you.
Right. It can be a disaster.
What's happening for you right now is the right thing. It's a big statement and a big promise, but if you act as if it is, then you have everything you ever need, and anything that comes kind of comes with appreciation, and it allows you to create in a optimistic, appreciative atmosphere, and that's when all of your best stuff is going to come. I believe. So that's my closing thoughts.
No, that's great. Great philosophy. Great way of thinking. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining, and everybody who watched the show. We had tons of people watching the show, so thanks so much for everybody tuning in. We'll be coming back soon, in a couple weeks, with another show. I'll make the announcement on the social media sites and stuff like that. But Steve, is there anything else that you want to mention that's coming up for you, or any new music or anything else that you want to mention?
Well, for those out there that might be fans and are expecting my next record, I haven't even started working on it. And that's because right now what I'm doing is I'm preparing for these orchestra recordings next summer. And I have about 3 or 4 hours of orchestra music that I'm getting in. It's written. Some of it I'm going to write a few more pieces, but I'm just preparing the scores for recording. I probably got another month or so of work, and then I'm going to start working on my next record. And I hope you like it.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. You hang on, Steve, while I hang up. And thanks everybody. You have a great week. We'll be back soon.